The end is nigh, Brady. The time is coming to an end. And I can tell you actually precisely when time is going to end. It's going to end at 3 a.m., 3:14 and 7 seconds on the 19th of January 2038. What's going on is we're talking about the end of Unix time. Now, you're making a face at me like you don't know what I'm talking about, Brady. Most of us at home are using either Windows or Mac-based operating systems for our computers. And somewhere buried deep down inside that system is a little counter that's been ticking away every second. It's a fast second. Every second since January the 1st, 1970. They began a counter in a 32-bit number, crucially, that was just going to count seconds. And obviously, because it's only a 32-bit number, it's going to run out at some point. That is the point. This is the moment when that number runs out of seconds to count. This is how your computer is telling the time. This is how your computer is keeping the date. So you can take this number, the number of seconds, and you can divide it and keep dividing it and keep dividing it to get back to the number of minutes, hours, days, years that have passed since January the 1st, 1970. So this is what's called the Unix epoch. Now the reason I keep talking about Unix is because way back then there was this operating system called Unix, which was just beginning to really take a hold in corporations and really mission critical systems. The point is, in every single one of those mission critical machines, there's a number ticking away, counting the seconds, and it's ticking towards January the 19th, 2038, when it's going to run out. And when it does, a very weird thing's going to happen. It's going to roll back to, I think it's December 1901. So in some ways it's great because it's an opportunity for us to redo the 20th century and maybe get it right this time. But in other ways, it's going to be absolutely catastrophic because it's a lot like the Millennium Bug. So some of your viewers were too young to remember the Millennium Bug, but those of us that were there, the Millennium Bug was a problem when we were storing the date as a 2-digit number in a lot of computers, mostly back in the 80s. And everybody thought, you know, it's a long way away. We're not going to have to worry about what happens when we get to 2000. But it just turns out that once you've got a computer that works, say if you're in a bank or if you're, you know, running an airline, you have a system that works, it costs too much to bother changing that. So things get left just working for years and years and years. And it came up to 2000, and all of these computers were just going to fail in some obscure way. So a lot of the time, the date started showing as 19,100. Or if it was a system which was dependent on the incremental date, like it's adding interest to your bank account, then suddenly it was going to go from being 99 to being 0, and it was going to add a huge amount of negative interest to your bank account, which is good if you've got a mortgage and terrible if you've got savings. I worked on this for a few years leading up to the millennium, and we went around and we fixed all of the machines that were too old to survive the millennium. And of course, everybody knows it wasn't a problem in the end. Okay, so there were a few cases, some sad cases and some quite funny cases where it did go wrong, but for the most part it wasn't a problem. So we have to go back to the Pac-Man video that we did where we were talking about binary numbers. And in Pac-Man we were storing that binary number as an 8-bit binary value, and that meant that it could count up to a maximum of 256. Now it's a choice. It's either a maximum of 256 and a minimum of 0, or a minimum of minus 128 and a maximum of 127. So this value has been running from a minimum of minus 2 billion to a maximum of plus 2 billion. And this is the moment when it reaches that maximum value of 2 billion. It's not actually 2 billion, it's about 2 billion 150 million, but it's a big number.
When I turn my computer off at home and it hasn't got electricity, obviously it's not counting anymore, is it?
It's not counting anymore, but there is a battery inside which is storing its current state. So it depends on how your computer's set up. Some computers are set up to connect immediately to the server and get the current time, just to make sure that all of those computers are synchronized across the network. Other computers, like your home computer, are set up just to read the date or the time from a memory chip, which has been keeping it stored with the CMOS battery. What we're going to have to do, very simply, same solution as always with these things, we've got to throw away the machines which have got too small a number and replace them with bigger versions. And that's already beginning to happen. We're already moving from 32-bit computers, which count in 32-bit numbers, to 64-bit computers, which count in 64-bit numbers. And with a 64-bit counter, then this problem is pushed out an awfully long way. And actually that number is somewhere way beyond the end of the known universe, way beyond the heat death of the universe.
Is it going to be a date when everyone's worried, do you think? Do you think this is going to be panic stations when this time comes?
Yes, I think there'll be a problem, because I remember being in a bank in 1999, it's quite a long time ago now, and looking at the oldest computer I had ever seen, and somebody saying, oh, that's just our payment system. And, you know, it just worked. You know, they used that word, just. And nobody had ever thought about it. And I had to look at that machine and say, well, you know what, your payment system's not going to work next week. We need to fix that. And I don't doubt for a second that there will be 32-bit computers sitting in the corner of some dusty bank, building society or airline or whatever in 2038, and they're going to just go wrong. And all of those bookings for your holiday in Malaga are all going to be erased in some horrible way. So I don't think it's going to go wrong in any life-threatening manner, but yeah, there'll be some comical errors. And certainly for people like me who know how to fix this problem, there's a great opportunity to, well, this is my pension we're talking about here. I'm going to go round upgrading 32-bit computers to 64-bit computers to pay for the last 30 years of my life. I'm looking forward to it already. You can go through and you can pick out, you know, key dates in Unix numbers. And the 9th of September 2001 was 1 billion, and quite a few people celebrated that. And there was a small celebration in Norway for 1,111,111,111. And so, yeah, people are noticing Unix time ticking away. But for most of us, you know, it's happening behind our backs. So, well, what we have here is the current Unix time at 1.34 billion. So if you're feeling really smart at home, apart from the fact that the date's in the top corner of the screen, you could work out when we're actually filming this, because this is the number that the computer uses to calculate this date. It's like watching your life just ticking away.